Marvin Gaye. Marvin was a storyteller known for hits like What's Going On, Sexual Healing, and Let's Get It On. He had a huge impact in both soul and rock-influenced R&B. But behind the smooth voice and chart-topping success was a life filled with turbulence. Marvin struggled with personal demons, drug addiction, financial woes, and a complicated relationship with his father, Marvin Gaye Sr. That tension would ultimately lead to one of the most tragic deaths in music history. On April 1, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, Marvin found himself in yet another heated argument with his father at their Los Angeles home. The two had a long, troubled history, with Marvin Sr. often being described as strict, abusive, and deeply resentful of his son's fame. This time, the fight escalated beyond words. In a moment of unimaginable tragedy, Marvin's father retrieved a gun, ironically, a gift that Marvin had once given him, and shot his son twice in the chest at point-blank range. The bullets tore through the legend's body, and within minutes, Marvin Gaye was gone. The world was in shock. How could a man who sang about love, healing, and unity meet such a violent end, especially at the hands of his own father? Fans mourned, tributes poured in, and the music world lost a legend far too soon. Here's a question for you. What do you think Marvin Gaye's legacy would have been if he had lived longer? Would he have redefined music once again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Jim Morrison, the rebellious poet of rock and roll. As the frontman of The Doors, Morrison captivated the world with his deep, hypnotic voice and enigmatic lyrics. Songs like Light My Fire, Riders on the Storm, and People Are Strange weren't just hits. They were experiences, journeys into the mind of a man who lived life on the edge. But Jim wasn't just a rock star, he was a seeker. A poet, a philosopher, a man obsessed with pushing boundaries, both musically and personally. And like so many before him, that obsession came with a dangerous price. By 1971, Morrison had grown weary of fame, the chaos of the music industry, and his own self-destructive tendencies. So, he left The Doors behind and moved to Paris with his longtime girlfriend, Pamela Courson, hoping to find peace and rekindle his love for poetry. But peace was the last thing he found. On the morning of July 3, 1971, Jim Morrison was discovered lifeless in the bathtub of his Paris apartment. Officially, the cause of death was listed as heart failure, but no autopsy was ever performed, leaving the circumstances of his death shrouded in mystery. Some say it was a heroin overdose, others whisper of foul play, and some even believe Morrison faked his own death to escape the spotlight. What do you think really happened that night? Was Jim Morrison a victim of excess, or is there more to the story? Let us know in the comments. Chris Cornell. Whether it was with Soundgarden, Audioslave, or his haunting solo work, Cornell had a voice that could shake your soul. Songs like Black Hole Sun, Like a Stone, and Fell on Black Days weren't just music, they were emotional experiences. His ability to blend raw energy with deep, introspective lyrics made him one of the defining voices of grunge and alternative rock. But behind the fame, the powerful vocals, and the stadium-sized performances, Cornell struggled. He battled depression and addiction for years, even as he continued making music that resonated with millions. Then, on May 17, 2017, after performing with Soundgarden in Detroit, tragedy struck. Just hours after leaving the stage, Chris was found dead in his hotel room. The official cause? Suicide by hanging. Fans were stunned. How could a man who had just performed in front of thousands, seemingly full of life, be gone so suddenly? Theories and questions started to swirl, especially after it was revealed that Cornell had taken anti-anxiety medication before his death, which some believe may have altered his state of mind. His wife, Vicky Cornell, has always questioned whether his death was truly intentional, or if the medication played a bigger role than people realize. Chris Cornell's death was a devastating reminder that even those who seem larger than life can be battling silent struggles. His voice may be gone, but his music, and the emotions he poured into it, will never fade. What's your favorite Chris Cornell song? Drop it in the comments and let's keep his legacy alive. Chester Bennington. As the frontman of Linkin Park, Chester became the voice for a generation. Songs like In the End, Numb, and Crawling spoke to the pain, the frustration, and the feeling of being misunderstood that so many of us struggle to put into words. But beneath that fierce, unrelenting energy was a man who, like many rock stars before him, battled with his own demons. Chester had been open about his struggles with depression, addiction, and the trauma of a difficult childhood. Yet, despite the darkness that loomed over him, he still found ways to connect with millions, pouring his heart out in every lyric, every performance. Then, in one of the most heartbreaking twists of fate, on July 20, 2017, just months after Chris Cornell's death, Chester was found dead in his home. Like Cornell, he had taken his own life. He was just 41 years old. The timing of Chester's death raised questions and added layers of pain for fans who couldn't help but wonder, was his passing in some way connected to Chris Cornell's? The two men had been close friends, and Chester's death came on what would have been Chris's 53rd birthday. In fact, Chester had been deeply affected by Cornell's death, and many pointed out that Chester's final moments echoed the darkness that had consumed his friend. The tragic coincidence of these two iconic voices passing so closely together has led to a flood of theories. Was it simply a case of profound grief and mental illness, or was there something more? Did Chester feel a connection to Chris's struggles, and did that bond lead him down a similar path? Chester Bennington's death left an enormous hole in the rock world, and his passing continues to haunt those who knew him, those who loved him, and anyone who ever heard his music. Do you think Chester's death was a result of grief over losing Chris Cornell? Or was there more going on beneath the surface? Let's talk about it in the comments below. Janis Joplin, one of the most iconic voices to ever command a stage. With her raw, unfiltered sound and unapologetic presence, she became the queen of rock in the late 1960s. Songs like Piece of My Heart, Me and Bobby McGee, and Cry Baby weren't just hits. They were anthems, an outpouring of emotions that captured the heartache, defiance, and freedom of a generation. Janis's voice was her weapon, and it carried her to legendary status. But for all her fame, Janis was deeply troubled. She had always struggled with insecurity and loneliness, feeling like an outsider in the world of rock and roll. Her rise to fame was clouded by her battles with addiction, particularly her heroin use, which she would openly discuss in interviews. Sadly, on October 4, 1970, at the age of just 27, Janis was found dead in her hotel room in Los Angeles. The cause? A heroin overdose. It was a tragic end for a woman who had given so much of herself to her music, her fans, and her art. But Janis's death wasn't just another overdose. It marked the loss of a true pioneer, a woman who had carved her own path in a male-dominated industry. The 27 Club, a group of famous musicians who died at that age, would soon include her name, and her passing became one of the most heartbreaking and defining moments of rock history. Janis's legacy is undeniable, and her music continues to inspire new generations of rock lovers. She may have been taken too soon, but the impact she left on the world of music is immortal. Do you think Janis Joplin could have changed the face of rock even more if she had lived longer? What's your favorite Janis track? Let us know in the comments. Michael Hutchence. As the lead singer of INXS, Michael exuded a kind of raw charisma that made him impossible to ignore. Hits like Need You Tonight, New Sensation, and Never Tear Us Apart became the soundtrack to the 80s and 90s, blending rock, new wave, and funk into an unforgettable sound. Michael wasn't just a singer, he was a force, a performer whose energy seemed to electrify every room he walked into. But behind that magnetic stage presence was a man struggling with his own personal battles. Michael's life was full of highs and lows, from his public relationships with supermodels and pop stars to his struggles with depression and the pressures of fame. His struggles were often overshadowed by his public persona, but those closest to him knew of the darkness he battled behind the scenes. Then, on November 22, 1997, tragedy struck. Michael Hutchence was found dead in his hotel room in Sydney, Australia. The official cause of death was ruled a suicide by hanging, but the circumstances surrounding his death remain shrouded in mystery. Some have speculated that Michael's death was the result of a botched autoerotic asphyxiation attempt, while others believe it was tied to the heavy depression he had been dealing with in the months leading up to it. His family and close friends have consistently questioned the suicide ruling, arguing that Michael had too much to live for. He had a daughter, a career still at its peak, and fans who adored him. Michael Hutchence' death left many unanswered questions, and to this day, fans, family, and even his bandmates continue to wonder whether the full story will ever come to light. Do you believe Michael Hutchence' death was a suicide, or was there more to the story than we know? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Jeff Buckley. With his haunting cover of Hallelujah and his own masterpieces like Lover, You Should Have Come Over, and Grace, Buckley became one of the most celebrated singer-songwriters of the 90s. His unique blend of alternative rock, folk, and soul, paired with that ethereal falsetto, captivated audiences around the world. But despite the critical acclaim and growing fan base, Jeff Buckley's life was one of quiet struggle. He was an artist in every sense, constantly exploring new depths of his creativity while battling with the weight of expectations and the isolation that often comes with fame. Then, on May 29, 1997, tragedy struck. Jeff was swimming in the Mississippi River near Memphis, Tennessee, when he disappeared underwater. His body was found 6 days later, floating in the river. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning. But even though the cause seems straightforward, there's still lingering doubt. The circumstances surrounding his death have raised many questions. Jeff had been in the water with a friend, and while some insist it was simply a tragic accident, others speculate that it may have been something more. Was it a moment of personal turmoil that led him to make a decision that would end his life? Was the drowning a result of a deeper, unspoken struggle? Or was it truly just an accident? Jeff Buckley's death remains one of the most mysterious and heartbreaking moments in music history. He was only 30, and with so much more music to give, his loss has felt like a void that can never be filled. Do you think Jeff Buckley's drowning was a tragic accident, or do you believe there was more to the story? Let us know in the comments. His legacy deserves to be remembered. Jimi Hendrix. One of the most influential guitarists in rock history. Hendrix didn't just play guitar. He became the guitar, pushing boundaries and rewriting the rules of what was possible with the instrument. His sound, his style, and his presence on stage forever changed the face of music. With songs like Purple Haze, Voodoo Child, and All Along the Watchtower. But Jimi's brilliance came with a price. His meteoric rise to fame in the late 60s was marked by wild success, but also by a lifestyle full of excess, drugs, alcohol, and the kind of fame that often comes with an inner turmoil. While he was celebrated for his music, Jimi was also struggling with the pressures of being in the public eye, alongside his personal demons. Then, on September 18, 1970, Jimi Hendrix was found dead in his London apartment. He had been staying at the Samarkand Hotel with his girlfriend, Monica Danman, and was discovered lying on the floor, having asphyxiated on his own vomit. The official cause of death was listed as an overdose of barbiturates, but there were complications in the story that left many wondering if the truth would ever be fully known. Was it truly an accidental overdose, as the authorities claimed? Some close to Jimi have questioned the circumstances surrounding his death. Monica Danman, his girlfriend at the time, was said to have had a troubled relationship with him, and there have been speculations that Jimi's death may have been the result of foul play. Some even wonder if it was a carefully orchestrated act to end his life, with others suggesting that it could have been a case of a mix of drugs, depression, and the pressure of living up to the expectations placed on him. The ambiguity around his death has led to countless theories and conspiracies over the years. Was Jimi Hendrix's death a tragic accident, or something more sinister at play? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you believe Jimi's death was a tragic overdose, or was there something darker behind it all? John Lennon. As a member of the Beatles, Lennon helped redefine not just music, but culture itself. Songs like Imagine, Give Peace a Chance, and Strawberry Fields Forever became anthems for peace, love, and social change. He was more than a musician. He was an activist, a visionary, and a beacon of hope for the world. But in 1980, Lennon was far removed from the global superstardom of his youth. He had taken a 5-year break from music to focus on his family, living a quiet life in New York City with his wife, Yoko Ono, and their young son, Sean. Lennon had even started making a return to music with his album Double Fantasy, which signaled his reintegration into the public eye. Fans were excited. Lennon was back. Then, on the evening of December 8, 1980, tragedy struck. John Lennon was returning to his apartment at the Dakota, a building just off Central Park, when he was approached by Mark David Chapman, a troubled fan who had been waiting outside for hours. In an act that would forever shake the world, Chapman pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and shot Lennon 4 times in the back and shoulder as he and Yoko were entering their building. Lennon was rushed to the hospital but was declared dead on arrival at just 40 years old. The world was stunned. John Lennon, a man who had fought for peace and spoken out against violence, was now the victim of a senseless act of murder. Mark David Chapman later claimed that he was inspired by The Catcher in the Rye, and some even suggest he believed he could be like the novel's protagonist, Holden Caulfield, in his quest to confront phoniness. But no matter the reasoning, the tragedy left an indelible mark on music and culture. To this day, questions linger about Chapman's true motivations. Was Lennon's murder the act of a deeply disturbed individual, or was there something more behind it? Do you think John Lennon's death was a random act of violence, or could there have been deeper forces at play? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Bon Scott, the wild, charismatic frontman of AC/DC, whose voice and energy defined the early days of one of rock's most legendary bands. Known for his raspy vocals, high-octane performances, and unapologetic rock and roll persona, Bon was the soul of AC/DC during their rise to fame. Hits like High Voltage, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, and Highway to Hell are etched in rock history, with Bon's raw energy setting the tone for what would become the band's trademark sound. Bon wasn't just a frontman, he was the embodiment of rock and roll, with all its excesses. His larger-than-life lifestyle included late nights, loud parties, and, of course, alcohol. He had a reputation for living on the edge, and that edge would eventually lead to his untimely death. On February 19, 1980, after a long night of drinking with friends, Bon Scott was found dead in the back of a car outside a friend's house in London. He had reportedly passed out after a night of heavy drinking, and while it seemed like a tragic but not entirely surprising outcome given his lifestyle, the details surrounding his death have always raised questions. The official cause of death was acute alcohol poisoning, but some have speculated that there may have been more to the story. Was Bon's death simply a tragic result of his rock and roll excess? Or was there something else? Perhaps a complication from an existing health issue? Or even an overdose on top of the alcohol? What made his death even more tragic was that AC/DC was on the brink of superstardom, and Bon had been deeply involved in the making of their iconic album Back in Black. The band had already begun working on what would be their most successful record, and Bon was excited about the future. He was just 33 years old. Bon Scott's passing left a hole in the heart of rock music, but AC/DC would continue with new frontman Brian Johnson, honoring Bon's legacy and forever carrying the torch he had lit. Do you think Bon Scott's death was simply a consequence of his lifestyle, or was there something more that we're still not seeing? Share your thoughts below, and let's keep celebrating the wild, unforgettable energy he brought to rock. Freddie Mercury. He was the flamboyant frontman of Queen. Freddie was not just a performer, he was an unparalleled force of nature. His voice, operatic, powerful, and effortlessly versatile, became the backbone of Queen's most iconic hits like Bohemian Rhapsody, We Are the Champions, Somebody to Love, and Radio Giga. But Freddie wasn't just about his vocal prowess. He had an undeniable stage presence that could captivate any audience, drawing them into his world of drama, energy, and unrelenting passion. Yet, behind the music, Freddie's life was one of complexity. He was known for his charisma, his private relationships, and his mysterious nature. He was an artist who lived life unapologetically, and as he rose to fame in the 70s and 80s, his personal life was largely kept out of the public eye. But in the mid-80s, when Queen was at its peak, Freddie's health began to decline, although he kept his struggles largely out of the spotlight. Then, in 1991, the world was rocked by the news that Freddie Mercury had passed away. He died on November 24, 1991, at the age of just 45, from complications of AIDS. For many, this was a devastating blow, Not only because of the loss of an irreplaceable talent, but because Freddie had been such a private person about his illness. His death brought AIDS into the public conversation in a way it never had before, as millions mourned the loss of a man whose music had touched their hearts and whose legacy was larger than life. Though his death was tragic, Freddie Mercury's legacy is immortal. His influence on music, his ability to transcend boundaries of genre and identity, and his courage to live openly in a time when LGBTQ+ issues were still largely taboo, have made him a legend whose impact continues to reverberate through the generations. Queen's music is timeless, and Freddie's larger-than-life spirit is forever embedded in the heart of rock history. Freddie may have lost his battle with AIDS, but he left behind an immortal legacy, one that continues to inspire, uplift, and captivate the world, decades after his death. What is your favorite Freddie Mercury moment or Queen song? Let's keep his incredible legacy alive. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And there you have some of the greatest rock stars who left us far too soon. We'd be bringing you part 2 later on. If you could bring back one of these rock stars for just one more performance, who would it be? And what song would you want them to sing? Drop your answers in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and share to others. It really helps keep this channel going. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we've got so many more stories to tell, and trust me, you don't want to miss them. Rock and roll will never die. And neither will the legends who shaped it. Thanks for watching. See you in part 2.